Hello, everyone. Very nice to meet you. Thank you, TransLink, for bringing me in, for giving this opportunity. Milos, wow, what a fantastic presentation. I'm a fan. Good luck. I've decided to actually take the presentation from a little different perspective because Andrzej and Milos spoke very much about the details in advance. I see a lot of value in what Andrzej said earlier regarding simplifying the setup, making sure that anyone actually can start using it. And on the other hand, as I said, I'm a fan of the strategy that Taos is implementing, so that we can all be leveraging the relevant data and helping our clients expand to the market. Because at the end of the day, and I hope you can see my screen, you don't, so I'll just make it possible right now. And I think it is, right? Can you just confirm, please? Yes, excellent. So what we all are trying to achieve is the expansion of our customers, right? We want to make sure that they actually go abroad, that they can provide their products on the global market or even local market at the end of the day, regionally, so that their target audience understands them correctly, right? And because typically this is costly, timely, we're trying to find simplified ways. How do we go about it? So where we typically are implementing these methodologies, if I may call them this way, that Andrzej and Milos were speaking about earlier, or what are the other speakers going to be talking about, is typically marketing content, anything that's related to presenting your product on a global scale, giving the introduction to your product, descriptions of the setups and stuff like that. And I just realized I need to be speaking slower for the interpreters. I apologize to the interpreters, so slow down. So go-to-market strategy. I will focus on the go-to-market strategy because I think this is critical information where we are not only using data and MT to help us expanding, but it also helps us with understanding the market trends. It helps us in collecting the latest information from our users. So if I decided to take the last part of this presentation to more of user interface, UX perspectives, and how can we leverage it there so that you guys can also walk away from the conference, from the event, with something a little bit on top of the MT perspective. So the next slide is really, now that we can process translation faster, there's much more content possible to be translated. So we're actually expanding the industry. And I believe even if you are from the translation buyer side, so you're purchasing translation services, this gives you a good sign because you will be responsible for maybe bigger teams, maybe your role will expand, but this is actually what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to help your organization to be expanding better on the international markets, as we said earlier, with cost, quality, speed. And here, typically, I would ask you to pool and to answer a pool and give me the most important perspective, but I'll just answer it here myself. What we most of the time see as the most important perspective of the translation delivery is not so much about costs. It's not so much about quality in the end. It's about speed. Because if we deliver on time, a little bit earlier, we still can get back and fix the stuff before it's being published, before the other departments than your, whether it's localization or translation department, is needing to be transferred to the other stakeholders in your organization. So I again want to stress the importance of speeding up stuff with this setup and helping us understand that all of these automations, whether that's translation memory, term basis, or machine translation are helping us to move faster and augment the work that human translators or human editors have been doing in the past. Now, many enterprises are not aware that the AI-enabled translation services are actually capable of achieving savings, right? And how do we go about it so that we can actually expand our services, so that we can expand our product appearance once again? So it simply helps us to be more visible. We can work better on our strategy. We have a quicker feedback on how is the content being published and stuff like that. I would like to, and I think these may sound typical to you. At the same time, it is critically important for us to realize that there are certain steps that are critically important in the workflow, in the stress of the processes that we're putting in the translation setup. So I would definitely suggest a few recommendations here that we could be looking at. And there are two main perspectives that we need to be looking at. One is the in-house. So how can we make sure that the content is streamlined from multiple internal stakeholders? And again, I'm speaking too fast. So how can we extract the content in such a way so that we can leverage all the resources, whether we're doing the translation internally or externally, but to make sure that the content is appearing to us? Milos perfectly described that we need to be diversifying the industry or the target audience when we're actually working with that particular with the particular content. So we need to make sure that all of that is well automated to be helping us to process all of that content in the best possible way. This is the industry standard explanation, totally not something that I've invented or Nimdzi invented, but the best suggestion here is to split the content, the type of content, into a couple of groups, some with super high, level of quality requirements, which is probably, you may see that I cut my finger. So if the description of the product that I was using wasn't informing me for the US market that I may cut my finger, my organization might be taken to a court. So that's the type of content we really want to make sure that has a high quality translation. But again, this is not something I need to explain to this group, I believe. But if we group them, then we can identify the different type of workflows that we may want to implement to the processes. And Milos talked about the blue scoring. Ondřej talked about the different workflow setups and how we can go about it. So once again, the best thing for you to do is to make sure that all the content that your organization is purchasing, you centralize in one location and then diversifying them into groups based on the importance, the requirements of the translation quality, right? Because this may improve the automation process for all of your suppliers. Okay, I believe that Milos already mentioned this Gartner perspective on future. In 3 years, we're going to run 75% of our translations through machine translation, right? So let's face it, there's no way we can go about it. Machine translation is being used all over the place. We need to implement it. We need to look at what are the ways to process for our own quality requirements and what are the setups that we need to be implementing, right? Because this is simply yet another opportunity for us to be implementing it. I wanted to stop for a second about these typical ways that clients are using machine translation, not only for the perspective of, did I say machine translation? I meant to say how the clients use artificial intelligence, how they use data that might have been produced during translations. The typical, I think even back in 70s, there was AI used for question answering, right? You would put a question somewhere and then the machine will come back to you based on the different details. I'm not going to go to describe the neural setup of MT, but these are the typical ways how already in the past the platforms have been used. So now we're just adding the language perspective, the translation perspective to these, where your chat bots on your website or simply, the automated questions might be answered in the target language for you. And that is definitely one of those, let's call it, lower requirements for your language quality, because the client will get the answer no matter what, right? They need it immediately. They need it quick. I'm looking at your website right now. I want to associate myself. I want to make sure, slowing down, I want to make sure that I am here correct, and I should continue researching your web. So in those typical 30 seconds that I'm looking at your website, I want to associate myself to get a clear message from your website. How the voice assistants are leveraging AI and data from our industry. Well, I think it's simple, right? If you imagine whether you're using Apple for Siri or you're using Amazon tools for Alexa, I apologize, I don't know what's the Yandex platform for that, but Microsoft for or Cortana, you simply need to train the engine with the voice, with the messages that they should be responding to you with, right? So what are the terms? What are the translations of this content? Where can we leverage it? How can we train those engines? And how do we make sure this is expanding? This is all being supported there. And this is the direction that definitely not only the translation industry is going, but the international market trend. I will leave this with you. This is again, something that has been discussed on the translation market for the last 20 or maybe 30 years, simply since the translation memory setup was created and was taken as standard. But we pay per word. But as long as we start doing post-editing activities, as long as we start to find new methodologies or even leveraging data for content creation, well, are we going to be paying for word? Are we going to be paid per hour? Are we going to be paid for the outcome of the final result? Well, that's still a great question. I would love to invite you to more sessions that Nimdzi is leading to kind of follow the trend and see what are the experts and other people suggesting as the right solution here. Okay, so I've already said earlier that I will focus a little bit on the perspective of data collection. So if someone is using, we already mentioned the chatbot, right? Or the quick questions and answers on that might help you being generated through MT. Well, we can quickly collect much more information than if we have it in single language, right? If your website, the chatbot is in multiple languages, we can immediately see the reactions. We can see the type of questions they're asking and react to it much faster. It brings me back to the market trends, that brings me back to the market opportunity. So that's why I decided to put it here, where we're looking here at, a typical translation process. The current enterprise decision and process are related to translation, are often siloed and not connected to the data reports, right? So the question is here, what does the process that integrates new quality look like? So we're seeing here that the manageability of the standard project inside the circle is actually helping us to proceed with the standardized process. With, okay, we get some country feedback from the country representatives and stuff like that, but how often do we actually get UX feedback? How often do we have a clear understanding or a quick understanding of what these people are searching for when visiting our website and stuff like that. So once again, we are also looking at other abilities to be implemented on our web with much faster response and also with getting more data because we provide it to them at this perspective. Okay, one quick message here. When you're localizing your content, when you're deciding which direction you should go, the most important question you want to ask yourselves is, if the tool, if your product, if your app were a person, what country would it be from? So what we're actually trying to understand is, by collecting all of this data, do these clients ask questions as if we were a foreign organization or if we were a local organization? Because this will help our marketing teams, our strategy teams to decide how much should we be investing in this market? How much do we need to focus on localizing or translating our content to be more effective in that perspective? And this is one of the typical studies that we have here, where we're kind of looking at the different, these are the standard, we call them language buyer personas, with their more formal, informal, splitting them by gender, occupation, and all of that, which will still help us to identify how do we want to go and expand to that particular market. I'm just using this. You might, if you follow Nimdzi, this has been published a couple of hours ago by my colleague Belen. On the left-hand side, we have this typical scenario where, we have some errors in our LQE scoring, and how do we go about it? And then the manager would say, well, just get them fixed, right? Or if it's not so critical and they pass the scoring, it doesn't matter. But doesn't it really? Does it have a critical impact? Are we actually bringing the results that we're looking at? And this is a typical situation where we're kind of having a list of quality estimations, but do they really matter, right? How do users perceive the brand experience? This is just to, again, stress the importance of why do we want to collect the data back from whatever has been, doesn't matter if machine translated or anyway processed, and send back to us to be able to collect the data and get insights about the particular results. So what is the new journey kind of perspective? This is a fancy graph, but what it actually wants to say is that the performance is always going to be growing, the quality is going to be growing, right? The MT effectiveness, we heard about it from Ondřej earlier, is going to be more effective because we're training the engines, right? But the question is, and the costs are going to be lowering, of course, because we're constantly developing on it. But the question is, if it's good enough, and what moment, and what do we do about it? So we need to be still running in those circles, going back from the performance, looking at the different quality relevance, and identifying what is good enough for us in this or that, whether that's industry or content type, as we said it earlier. I've been super fast with my presentation. I was thinking that it's going to take more time, and I still didn't realize that the interpreters were there a couple of times. So apologies for being fast. But here is the suggestion. We want to be looking at the effort versus the costs, and we want to look at the effects versus the results. So if we don't invest properly, if we don't look at the XLQ, as we call them, we may not be so successful, as the users will not be coming back to us with a positive feedback, although our content might be perfectly translated or ideally created. So once again, I invite everyone to follow the data that you are collecting from your users, push it through. If you have challenges with convincing your team members, your managers, your internalization department to help you or to understand this perspective, why is it important to collect the language data and how to reuse it for market expansion or for product creation, come to us, come to Nimdzi. This is where we have a lot of insights and we can analyze whether this particular solution might be effective for your organization or whether we should be looking at different strategies. I would say that's it. Mikhail, are there any questions? Was this anyhow relevant?
As we're waiting for questions from the watchers, we have I have my own question. Actually, we were on
go ahead.
Which you also had a speech, remember? And there was a question during my presentation, and it was like this: there was a person from a small LSP, and he asked, what do small LSPs do in this new changing world of technology, and what should they do? What niche should they look for, as they are not as technological as they would want to be? They don't have resources, financial, human resources, any resources for developing themselves as major LSPs are doing.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
Great question. I think you always have to find your niche on the market, right? Again, as Milos said it, you should never overcomplicate things. If there's too much, it will never work perfectly. So if we take it the opposite way, invest in where your niche on your market can be, and how can you be unique offering to your potential customers. So that's the way to go about it, in my opinion. Otherwise, well, look, all of the organizations, if they want to be expanding or even stay on the market, they constantly need to be investing in further development, right?
Yeah, that's right. And as for your predictions, when do you expect this AI technologies be the main way to do translation services? When do you think will be this threshold after which we will take language services more as AI delivered than human delivered?
My humble opinion is that we are already there. The thing is that just like we had it, in the past with typewriter, I could have created more translation. Then we had translation memory, right? Or we even have machine translation earlier than that. And we would be just leveraging and expanding to more languages. If you look at it, Mikhail, already you yourself surely can find much more content that is source international, whether it's English or any language, but you used to get it in Russian, right? Or in your native language. So we're kind of getting used to that the content is coming to us in our own language. Even if we speak the other language, we would still be preferring to have it there. So that means that the market opportunity for our industry is constantly growing, right? Is enormously expanding. The question is, I would say the right question is the AI, because we're seeing, I'm also at the executive board at TechCom, which is the International Technical Documentation Association. And typically, all of these writers will be creating the manuals, right? Does anyone read manual anymore? No. What do? You watch videos, right? You're used to watch very short videos. But can you translate? Can you subtitle them? what are the automation setups there, right? And that's why I was talking about these voiceovering and voice training tools that will help us to actually find yet another way to provide our translation services. Does that answer?
Yeah, that does. Yeah, that does. Actually, yeah, if you guys haven't noticed, Joseph had automatic subtitles on the screen. So yeah, I appreciate that very, very much. Yeah, it's a big deal. Yeah, it's a great thing, and actually they work really good. Say some 70 or let's say 80% of the text was correct or about correct. So yeah, thank you. That proves Joseph's words on AI that has already come to our life and has been and is around us right now. I mean, not even looking at YouTube or anything. These automatic subtitles or even Yandex, if you know, that now has automatic translation into Russian from YouTube and Vimeo player, as far as I remember. So
this goes even that far that the instruction manuals, the internal company manuals, are being created through videos, right? So instead of having, you know, and let's say Adobe internal department training materials, you would record videos and you need subtitles for them. But if you want to do this for other regions, once again, as we said it earlier, if you want to be appearing enough in front of your local audience, even if these are internal team members, you still need to localize the content, right? You need to localize the videos. So it's all about that, and there's a huge opportunity arising for us, especially after the pandemics, or I would love to say pandemics, but at the end of pandemics, but it's who knows. Anyway, yeah. So there is definitely a great opportunity in this perspective as well.
Yeah. Joseph, yeah, thank you for this presentation. Thank you for the analytics. Thank you for the predictions. So very precious things from you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for this participation. Looking forward to seeing you in the future.
Thanks for the invite. Bye-bye.
Take care.